Okay, we're back. We had to change cameras. Ran out of film in the other one. So we'll get this vise out of the way. And while we were gone, one battery box is now glued onto the side of the car with hot glue. It's got a vertical hole drilled through it all the way for the paperclip wire, and it already has the hole drilled in the back of it for the spring and commutator wire, the brushes wire. So we're going to add this to the side of the car with hot glue and make it match the far side. Doesn't matter whether you put them high or low or what position you put the battery boxes in, as long as they're accessible. We have to run the wire through the battery box so that the spring ends up at the bottom of it, down in here, and the wire comes out the hole to become the brushes wire. So we'll insert this into the battery box. Sometimes that's easier said than done. The hole is filled, so I'm just going to poke it out from the other side so I can see it. There we go. Takes a steady hand, but we got it. And that comes out, and the spring disappears down inside the battery box. That spring is what keeps the battery loaded up against the paperclip switch. It's a good idea to put a battery in there and put something in it to hold it in place to keep the spring in the right position. So we'll just take a chunk of paperclip and thread it through the hole. And now this wire coming out the end gets stitched back and forth through the car. This one is going to have to end up on the far side of the car, so we'll use the 3 holes towards the front. And the first move is to just stick it through the car and pull it tight with a pair of pliers, and that makes sure that it stays seated. And then we're going to thread it back into the car and pull it through to the other side, and again pull it tight. And one more time, this last stitch will lock it down and make it end up on the proper side of the car so that it can reach the brushes. I'm just using the pliers to squash that wire down tight. Now before I try to position this wire, I like to straighten it out so I know what I'm dealing with. We want this to end up pressing against the commutators down here. So I'm going to bend it back and up so it's towards the back end of the car, facing up a little bit. And I'm actually going to give the wire a little bit of a crimp with some needle nose pliers so that when I pull it out and pull it down, there's a torsion spring effect to hold it tight against the motor. And that is where we would need that to end up. So I'm going to cut it off with a little extra. And I like to bend the end of it back to make a little loop on it so that you don't impale your fingers on it too many times, because that wire is sharp. Squeeze that closed. That's just a bit of a safety measure. So I can now put the other wire in the other battery box and put the other brush on. So I'll take this battery out, put another wire down this box, it comes out the other side. Pull it through, and now pull that spring down in there, put a battery in on top of it to hold the spring down, put a paperclip in to hold the battery in, and you're ready to stitch this wire. This one only has to go through twice. Through. We're making some tight bends here, so we might have to help it make the right bend. And then back through again. It's important to make sure these 2 wires don't touch each other on their journey through the car, because that'll short out your batteries and and your motor won't run. Now this one has to push forward, so we're going to bend it so that it is in a position up and forward of the car. I'm going to put a little bit of a crimp in it with the pliers, and then pull that down gently so that it ends up pressing on the motor. I'm going to need to help that one a little bit with the pliers. We want to let this stay there on its own accord when the motor is turning. So that's in a good position. I can cut off the excess and bend that little loop on the end for covering up the sharp point. And that's ready. Then we'll find another battery, and this motor should be ready to test. Okay, I think we're ready. I've got a pair of batteries. I'll put them in the car like one reversed from the other, positive out, negative out. We'll put a paper clip in that's got a loop bent in the end of it. So I'll cut this paper clip off, bend a little handle into it, and stick that through the hole to hold the battery in. And that just locks the battery in place. Now this paper clip has been straightened out. I put a right angle bend at one end of it. That will lock this battery in place. But the other end of this paper clip is going to swing across and become the on-off switch. In fact, now that it's there, that motor runs great. So now I'm going to bend this paper clip so that it will become the on-off switch. I just put a little hook in it so that it will stay in contact. And then I like to bend the rest of it up as a flag so I know what position it's in. And it just snaps in place. Now it's running backwards, so I have to take both batteries out and reverse their position. We'll just pop the wires out, turn the batteries over, stick them back in, and at this point I'm ready to label the car so that I know that for this particular car, the right side battery, the passenger side battery, has to be negative out, and that'll make the car run forward. I can put the wheels on this and try it out on the floor. So we'll put the front wheels in their carrier. Make sure they spin nice. They do. Now I have to take the motor out again in order to put the rubber band on it. So I'll just put it back in my clamp. Take the motor out, put the rubber band on it, and put it back in the car. And this time when I put the motor in, I have to make sure that the brushes end up on the correct side of the commutator. Got it tangled. Try that. Okay, got the motor installed. Back wheels have a groove cut in one of the wheels. Feed the rubber band around that. Put the wheel back in its holder. Turn the car on. Make sure it runs. Now at this point we can angle the motor and the back wheels to make the rubber band track nicely. Just like making a conveyor belt work. The car will also run better if I put just a dot of WD-40 on the brushes. Let's see, where did that go? Okay, I've got it running, and we'll put a dot of WD-40 on the brushes and see if you can hear the difference. Oh yeah, much better. And take that out and run it on the floor. and a finished car. Turn that off by unclipping the paper clip, and you have a finished car.